Hello and welcome to another chapter of the Hypertrophy Odyssey. It is the fourth day of the week, aka the special beam cannon workout. To the main subject matter for today. You don't know how good you have it until it's gone. The main reason why I want to discuss this is because of the fact that I have a coworker who, by the time that this video is actually released, has left and has been gone for a little while. And we had been working together for approximately 2 years. In fact, I've probably talked about her in this episode right here. And I guess it was a shock to find out that she was leaving, but it wasn't that shocking. It was just kind of like a damn moment. But it made me realize something, and this is probably going to be an updated version of this later on as I'm going to figure out a little bit how things go while she's gone. And it looks like it's going to be a okay transition, nothing too crazy. But you really don't understand how good you have it until it's over. And it made me think about this entire subject in its entirety, and how, yeah, you really don't understand how good it is until it's over. And I think I've talked about something like this before, especially when you don't know when the end is coming. You know, it's like that old friend when you had an Xbox Live account or PSN account, and then all of a sudden this was the last Call of Duty game you had, and that's it. Like, there was nothing else afterwards. And it's one of those feelings that's such a, I guess it's like bittersweet in a certain sense, because you know it's going to happen. It's in a certain sense good that it's going to happen because the ending is chosen, not the ending is chosen for you, which I'm a big believer about. But it's just one of those things that makes you think of, man, things are going so well beforehand. It gets a lot of those types of things going on. So in today's episode, we're going to be looking at that and a lot of other stuff that goes in between that, because it is somewhat of a very nice thing to think about, but as well, it is a change, and change is always a very interesting dynamic because it brings the fear of the unknown, which is something that's happening to me currently, but it also is something that needs to happen. It has to happen. We don't know, but you don't really know how good you have it until it's over. We're going to be looking at all that and a bunch of other stuff when we get to Mother Base.
Alright, so started this day off with squats, which is pretty good, but anyways, back to the main subject matter at hand for today. You don't know how good you have it until it's gone. So the main reason why I wanted to discuss this is it was because this was something that did happen, or at least I got this feeling after my coworker had left my job. But we'll get back to what happened at work. But I think that right now, when this was happening in particular, I really didn't realize how much for granted the mundaneness, the stability, that factor of always having somebody there relatively simply the same thing over and over again. It was pretty good. It was something that I just kind of took advantage of, that this wasn't going to change for a while. And it was something that was a mistake on my end because I never really planned on the eventualities of the changes and everything else. So that fucked me up because I was an idiot and didn't really do anything about it. So that was the issue. But thankfully, since this has happened, a lot of stuff has changed in the workplace for the better and the worse. I mean, for the better in the sense that now I have actually elevated my position at my job, so I have more responsibilities, which equals more pay, which is great, but also sucks because I have more responsibilities, thus making it so that editing these videos have become a little out of hand. That's why it's not that great. But at the same time, it does mean more money, and more money is kind of good right now, especially because this isn't paying the bills as much as I would like for YouTube to start paying the bills. It's not going to happen anytime soon. So that is something that is a drawback of the unfortunate thing. But at the same time, it made me also think about all of the things that was going on around this time, and it made me realize that I was taking advantage of a lot of the stuff that we were doing together as at work to make it so that I had time to be able to have downtime in order to do stuff here and do the channel stuff, which it was interesting because now it's not as frequently that I can do this type of stuff, but as well, it's kind of interesting that now I kind of moved away from doing this at work and more so outside of it, which has caused a little bit more issues on creating episodes, but kind of a different story for a different day. But as well, this time period made me realize that I had grown way too accustomed to this time frame. I had became way too comfortable in what was going on, the mundane, really, the grind. I had become too inflexible to it, and I think that that's really what fucked me up for a while there. I was actually really fucked up in a certain sense, like where I didn't understand, like it was like almost like a depression, but not really. It was more of a changing of the tide per se, and that was coming, and I wasn't prepared for it. I felt underprepared, even though I had a good while. I actually had a good month and a half in order to prepare for the biggest change ever, really. But it felt like I was like the weight of the world was getting crushed on me for some weird reason, which I didn't understand at the time. But now it was more of a me understanding that the good times were ending, not necessarily all of the good times, but now it's different times that can be equally as good, as I have found out that now that I'm getting paid more, though I have have more responsibility, which at the end of the day kind of sucks, is nice because now I'm actually having more abilities to do other things at my job, like move on up and also be able to possibly future work from home, which would be great, at least a day in the week, which would also be nice, which means that I can actually go back to editing these and doing stuff like that. And now I'm getting less responsibility of my old responsibilities taken care of by others, which is kind of good because then eventually I would be able to actually go back to editing during work and doing all this other stuff. As balancing everything out was a little bit of a learning curve, of course, but it slowly has gotten better and better. So it's an interesting thing to look at it from when the good times end, quote unquote, because it's really more of a, you don't know what is the good times and where the instability of the world will come in and try to destabilize you. And I think that that's the biggest thing was for me, was that I was basically getting my world rocked. I wasn't ready for that. And I think that now, realizing that that's what that was and how much it threw me off completely, I wouldn't let this type of stuff happen to me again, or at least affect me as much as it did when this was happening. Because of course, we can always try to prevent these types of things, try to maintain the status quo as long as we can. But at a certain point, there will be things that come out through left field. And of course, I'm not necessarily going to be one to start preparing for every single possible bad scenario ever, because then you're getting into a hyper paranoia, in which case you are probably going to cause yourself to go insane. But it's more of a not letting it affect my future as much as I thought it would. And that was the big thing, was that I was causing more of a dread in my own mind of the possibilities of things that are going to go awry versus the things that could go right. And right now things are going right because I actually managed to somehow step up and make sure that the future continued to be good and not necessarily worried about the terrible things that could possibly happen in this case, and more so just prepare myself. But also as well an acknowledgement of the fact that the good times did come to an end, this particular type of good time, and thus we have to move on to the next type of good time. And that's the hard part, is just consolidating that thought, because then you understand that yes, it has come to an end and it sucks that it's come to an end, but that doesn't mean that good times aren't just around the corner, but there has to be some type of transitional period, because there's just no way to just go from one to another back to back really without any type of downtime or just learning a new system or learning new things and learning new people and that entire idea. But once you get past that and that entire issue, you can have the good times again in a different way or in a similar way to before, but just slightly changed, so that way you can actually do stuff like earn more money and things like that.
And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercise is not filmed, none. Exercise skipped, also none. Got everything in, thankfully. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. You don't know how good you had it until it's over. So the main reason why I wanted to discuss this is, like I said, there's a lot of turmoil happening in the workplace. People are leaving, or aka my coworker. Actually, people are leaving, and at this point, I think too, or that's a whole other story for a whole other day. But I think that this is a very much one of those moments in my life where everything was pretty good for like a good year, a good solid year of just pretty good stuff. It was relatively consistent. It was nothing really changing. It wasn't necessarily like amazing in terms of like financial growth or whatever the fuck, but there was a stability that was very nice because I didn't necessarily have to worry too much about work in a certain sense. Work was just work. Now work is training and hoping that the other person can pick up the slack that was once picked up by somebody else, and I have to really think about that and ever shifting lines and changes and all this other stuff. And it's annoying in a certain sense, but obviously it's gonna happen, right? But it's also a moment to show that some things are just good, and then you really don't know how good you have it until it's gone. I think a lot of people will just generally have to deal with this. You never really know when the good times end, unfortunately. And it's like you can have certain indicators for it, obviously, but I feel like a lot of the time there is no like set in stone indicator. Hey, this is one of those times where there is an indicator of when the good times are ending. And it's kind of shitty in a certain sense. because now it's like, all right, now things are going to be different. Now, obviously, how much they change can all just vary on a lot of different factors, of course, but at the same time, it's just never going to be the exact same as it once was. And dealing with that, knowing that is tough, I guess, is the best way to describe it. It's not fun to have to sit there and think of a good time ending, but at the end of the day, it has to end, because if it doesn't end, it's just going to become a bad time, and then it gets clouded. And you can see this in relationships across the board, really, and it doesn't matter whether it's platonic or romantic. It mostly happens in romantic, but it can happen in platonic depending on the dependency between each person, but it's a whole other subject for a whole other day. I think that just when it's over and you don't know really how it is, it's kind of shitty. But I think this is probably like more me being more sentimental than I probably should be, but realistically, that's just how I am. I think that the idea of enjoying what you have and knowing that you have something is probably the most important thing. I probably took that for granted a little too much every once in a while, and not even just in only the workplace, but in general life. I probably should be more appreciative of certain things that will eventually leave this world, or of people that will leave my life, because I don't know how long they will be around, I really would like to be more grateful than I am. I should start doing that, because it is something of a quality that I feel like I needs to be expressed more. I feel like I need to have more gratitude for the good things in life rather than the express anger that most likely takes up a lot of my time because of the shittiness of the world. Instead, being thankful for the things that I have and the people that I get to experience life with, and those types of things. And this is probably one of those reminders that isn't just Thanksgiving or something like that, in which case it's like all you think about at Thanksgiving is football and food, which congratulations, American culture, you've taken it over. The entire idea of it being just giving thanks, the idea of gratitude is kind of lost upon the people. But at the same time, I think that it's not reserved for the singular day. And that's the main thing, I think, is that be appreciative of the things before they're gone. Show appreciation. Understand that these things might not be there. At least in this case, the choice was made on her own, so then that way she could go off and do whatever she wants to do. That is better than the alternative where the choice was made for her, in which case that would have not been good, because more likely than not, it wouldn't have been a good reason. So it would have just been terrible. But knowing that, and knowing that there is an end, at least be thankful that the end was chosen, but also that the previous times, and I think that trying to figure out if this is the golden era or like the good times, where to give thanks to that. Where do you know where it is? And I think a lot of people inherently know, but we end up letting it become the baseline without actually giving thanks to those who make it be able to be the baseline within and of itself, which is debt of gratitude that I should probably start living life with, especially with those who are around me and those who I'm very grateful for having around a lot of the time, even as somebody as simple as my dog over here. Very grateful to have him. So it is something to do, really, personally, that I would love to do. And this is partly what this video is about, really, is just being more grateful to the people around me. So with that being said, though, this one, not necessarily random, but still something that is nonetheless something that happens in life. So please let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. If you have any stories about this, please let me know. When the good times come to an end, that type of stuff, or where somebody leaves and you're like, damn, like this was a good time. I didn't appreciate it enough, or something like that. Please let me know in the comment section down below. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back tomorrow with a new video. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Stay cool. I will see you in the next one. Keep it heavy. Stay safe out there. Peace.